Okay, how's everyone doing? Good? So just by a quick round of applause, how excited are you to be back in person again? I am too. I spend a lot of my time on the road, and you can imagine COVID really created a lot of change for me as it created a lot of change for you. And what I'm really here to talk about today, under the guise of simplicity, is to talk about the topic of change. You know, it's funny because I have my background, I have a degree in foresight, or futuring. I'm a futurist. That is a real title and a real job, by the way. And what's really interesting about it is we talk about the slow pace of fast change. And the reason I say that is because for many of us, you know, change is a dimmer switch, but we don't think of it that way. We always seem to embrace it and recognize it the minute it becomes a stick of dynamite. And what I want us to be able to do is get out of that dynamite mode, which is reactive, and really pay more attention to the dimmer switch. But in able to do that, we have to kind of change our mind shift around how we think and how we work. Now, one of the things I will say, and I truly, truly believe this, is I think COVID, the last 2 years, health issues aside, will be the most positively transformative time of our lifetime. And the reason I say that, and I see this every day in corporations, which is where my world really is, it's because we finally challenged our assumptions around the way we work, the things that we work on, and how we spend our time. And are we really spending time on things that matter? And for most people, the answer was absolutely not. We were spending our time on unnecessary things, things that just weren't adding any value, things that were obligations, and it was time for us to stop and actually be able to innovate in the ways that we wanted to, and just not when we're forced to. So I'm going to talk with you a little bit about how we got here, and then I want to talk just quickly about what are some of the things already happening or trends you should know about what you're preparing your students to do. And then finally, I want to give you some very practical tips. I'm a very practical Midwesterner, and I want to be able to show you some ways that you can start to create change back at your colleges right away. So let's dive in. Let's talk a little bit about what the heck is going on. Now, for many of us, here's what I think is interesting. We know over the last couple years, everyone has been wildly productive. You're exhausted, but everyone has been productive. And if these stats feel real to you, they are. So we are working longer, we are having more meetings, we're having more people in those meetings, and we're getting a lot more things in our inbox, most of them like empty calories. We are collaborating just more than ever, but I think what we're doing is we're mistaking meetings for collaboration. Meetings are not collaboration. But that's just kind of the work trend, right, that's happening. What about the larger trend and the result of it? The larger trend, kind of in the zeitgeist, I think, is what's interesting. And that trend is about more, better, faster. And what I think is really interesting for us is the reason people are tired isn't just because they had to do more. It's because they're getting tired of running a marathon at the pace of a sprint, right? Do you ever feel like that? I do, and I run a simplicity company. So what's interesting for this is, right now we've had this, remember the slow pace of fast change? This was happening before COVID, right? So we have this 24/7 mentality. We expect it, even our students do, right? And then of course we also have this immediate expectation. Like, God bless Netflix and Amazon, but I curse them too, right? I mean, I actually, I live in New York City, and my offices are down in the Chrysler Building, right on 42nd Street. And there's an Amazon Go in my building, and there's also an Amazon and a Google in my building. I can have things delivered to my floor in less than an hour. Because I need it? No, but because I can. So we do, and that's the world we start to live in. And then, of course, what happens to many of us, and I feel this, which is right now we are not leading. We are really executing. And I think for a lot of people, we're more focused on tasks than strategies. Does it feel that way? In fact, I would argue for many people, at the end of the day, you're not being able to say all the things you accomplished. You really have just gotten through the end of the day and you've executed your calendar. That's what you did. I don't think that's meaningful. And the result for many of us is we don't have enough time to think, right? Thinking becomes a daring act, and you're in education. We have less focus because we're focused on more, not valuable. And I think because of that, we get more burned out. I mean, your students, I know, I have one in college right now, they're burned out. I know workers right now, they're burned out. So how do we change that? So slow pace of past change isn't just this stuff that you already know, right? Yes, COVID changed everything. We challenge the assumptions. Yes, we are in a rapid time right now. Everything is immediate. But I think something happened before that. And I'm going to show you through a little exercise I want to do with all of you. So just by show of hands, how many people here are good at math? Okay, all right, 10 of you are good at math. I know it's before cocktail hour. You guys can do this, I promise. How many people are good at adding two numbers together? Depends on the number, though, you guys. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a quick math problem. And here's how it's going to go. I'm going to say a number, and you're going to repeat it. And then I'm going to say another number, and you're going to add it together. And we'll do this together out loud. So for example, I'll say the number 2, and you'll yell 2. And then I'll say the number 2 again, and you will yell. That was almost confident. That was good. 4. Yes, the answer is 4. All right, let's do this together out loud. And let's start with the first number, and then we'll add them up. So together out loud on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, 1,000. Let's add it up. 1,000 and? 40. Great. You got this. You can yell it louder. Great. Next one. 3,007. Good. 3,009. Good. 4,009. That's great. 5,000. Oh my God. The future of education. This is great. Good night, everybody. I need a cocktail now. What happened? Right? Pattern. That's exactly right. Pattern thinking. Now, of course, if I'm giving this speech in the corporate world, what I say is, a couple things happen, right? We fall into pattern thinking because we're taught to get to the answer quickly. Right? We're about black and white, not about gray. And sometimes the most innovative answers are the gray areas. The other thing is speed. We want to get there faster, right? And we're distracted. Pattern thinking is okay, but here's the problem for many of us. You think you're in a groove, but you're in a rut. And they look and feel exactly the same. That's the problem. So for many of us, before COVID, the reason we weren't changing fast enough, but then we're able to really quickly because of COVID, is because we were in a groove. And we didn't realize that we were actually in a rut. Just because a process is efficient and you can do it doesn't mean it's good. So how do we start to change that up? And why do you need to change it up? Well, here's the things where you're going to go, God, I already know all this, but I don't know that you do. So preparing, you're not preparing employees, you're preparing humans, right, for life. But what kind of life are they having when they get out of college? Especially around work, and work has dramatically changed. And what I think is interesting is some of these trends you probably already do, but some of them you don't in the way that they're being perceived in the bigger world. So for example, right, within how you teach or what you teach or the courses that you have, everyone's moving towards experiential if you haven't already. People need apprenticeships and experiences. That's what they expect. They are all accelerated. I tell you, my job is I teach adult children. That is what I do. And they all have ADD, all of them. And if I could manufacture the courses that I teach into a pill or plug it into the back of their head, they would be so happy because they don't have time. When I started my company 20 years ago, we had multi-day courses, right? And now I don't have many clients that will accept a course that's longer than 60 minutes. That's it. Right? And it's not because I make a joke about ADD, it's because they don't have time, and I'll get to that in a second. The next thing that's really interesting is the idea around flexible, right? That's why we have to offer it in many different ways. The real thing that's really interesting to me has been the whole trend around micro-credentials, right? Certification, badging, because people want to show off. I tell you, I hear my son, and I'm sure you hear your students, it's all about the badges I can put on LinkedIn. That's it. I want to show my credit. It's not about the topic, it's about the type of skill. And then you keep going, and it's about collaborative, it's focused and relevant. The big thing you hear right now at corporations is everything has to be taught in the flow of work. Everything. No, people don't go to offsites. I mean, they do if they're at the executive level, but most people need to have it taught in the flow of work, meaning we go online, we teach the course virtually, and then they come together and we have to apply it to a real business challenge that they're doing right now so they can fix it immediately. No more theory. Right? Businesses don't have time for theory. And then the final thing that's really interesting, and you probably have heard of this, but the big vernacular right now too, we don't say power skills, we don't say soft skills, we say power skills. Like, we're finally taking soft skills seriously. And what's interesting about that is because of the move to T-shape people. And for those of you that know this, forgive me, but those of you that don't, everyone talking about, right, it's no longer about just topic, subject matter expertise, it's about the skills on top. So I can have the best scientists at Novartis, by the way. They're amazing. They're incredible people. Some of them will not succeed, right? Because they can't collaborate, they're not resilient, they can't creative problem solve outside of the lab, they can't work with other people, they can only do what they know. And companies need people that can pivot a little bit better. So what do I mean by this T-shaped people? This is the kind of thing that we work on, right? We're not doing the depth. It's not just about the topic. It's about the skill. This is where they badge. This is what they want. So I need to have a badge that I want to put onto LinkedIn, and this is getting really corporate-y, but I think it's true, in leadership, in resilience, in agility, in creative problem solving, and foresight. And the reason for this is because we don't want to have to treat change like it did with COVID. COVID was everyone's agile and pivoting, right? And I got to tell you, if one more person tells me to be agile and pivot, I'm going to slap them. Like, it's just the worst. I'm so tired of pivoting right now. And I don't want my team to pivot. You know why? I want them to be creative problem solvers. Pivoting, it feels like how people are treating it as like a game of dodgeball, right? Like they're waiting for the change to happen and they can respond to it. I don't want to respond to it. I want to create it and I want to put it on somebody else. So how do I do that? I want to do it in a little counterintuitive way. And the reason I'm telling you this is I think a lot of people come up and say, when you got to do things differently and you have to do more. I'm going to tell you to stop doing things and do less. I think that is key. I want you to stop doing some things. A big trend right now, right, within corporations and strategic planning, and we do it too, is don't tell me during your strategic plans all that you're doing. You have to also tell me what you're going to stop doing. And that's really important, right? Because it sends a signal of what waste are you cutting out and where are you spending your time in places with intention that matter. So let's get into that for a second, because I don't have a lot of time. I want to just go over 3 different kind of themes that you can think about. Right? This is for you to talk about over cocktail, that you'll go, that was crazy, I can't believe she said that, or this is amazing, I'm going to try this when I get back to the office or to my students. So if you're going to really lead and transform, you've got to think in terms of simplicity. I want you to think in terms of value, not volume. And I think one of the, it was interesting, one of the award recipients, I was really listening when he said, you know, it used to be about colleges, like how many students, how many buildings, how many, that's fine. But it's very similar to that what happens in corporations. It's how much. You get bonus based on how many geographies, products and services, P&Ls, et cetera. I don't know anyone that gets bonused for less, unless they're in a divestiture or something bad's happening. Why? Why? Why don't we bonus people for stopping things that are just a complete waste of time? Right? Remember, time is a non-renewable resource. You will never get it back. I'm actually, my bets, it's funny, when I give this talk to corporations sometimes, I say I'm waiting for the first employee that sues their company for wasting their time and wins. Right? Like, that's just going to change the game, I tell you. All right, so let's look at these 3 themes. I want you to challenge the status quo. This is about flipping the script. Right? I want you to take this avant-garde approach. The second thing I want you to think about is how can you really engage people with intention and impact? And it's on a daily basis. Like, this is small and micro. And then finally, how are you going to get rid of the unnecessary? And it's going to be fun. So let's start talking about the status quo, or excuse me, challenging the status quo. I'm going to tell you very tactically some things that you can try. And by the way, at the end of all this, I'm going to ask you later in the hallway which one you're going to try first. You may only try one of these. That's it. You're going to want to try all of them? No, you may only try one. Okay? So think about which one would have the biggest impact based on where you are with change within your college, your organization, your courses, et cetera. The first thing, and these are very corporate and they work, right? I'm trying to stretch you out of your boundaries. If I just give you examples, by the way, within education, that's a competitive review. People that really innovate go between, adjacent, and beyond, and that's where I want you to go today. So one of the first things you can do is have a work hackathon. You can do this with your students, you can do this with your staff, you can do it with your colleagues. This is the winning team actually at Novartis that hacked work. And the reason work hacking is important is because when people go around a process, and most processes suck, they're terrible, right? When they go around the process, they don't tell you about it because they think they're cheating. That's the problem, right? People have come up with lots of ways to work around the system, but you don't know it because they think they're doing something bad. And Novartis noticed this and they said, you know what, we're gonna hack some stuff that is really a pain in the butt. And there are a lot of things within business units and things, their sphere of control, your department, your division, whatever it is, that if you got the people that work for you together and said, let's tackle this problem, how would you hack it? They will come up with a lot of things that will shock you. And you'll take waste out of the system immediately. Now, if you can't run a work hackathon or a class hackathon, what if you completely hacked the college? Now, before you escort me off the stage, go with me on this. What if we killed the college? You know, my first book was called Kill the Company, so go with me on this. And it was successful because it was so avant-garde. And it was interesting because I wrote it for businesses, but I can't tell you how many people, I just got a call from someone in New Zealand last week who works at a nonprofit who thanked me because they killed their nonprofit. But they didn't kill it, that's not what you're doing. This is an exercise in proactive obsolescence. So here's where it came from, and then I want to show you how you can do it. Now, this is not for the faint-hearted, this is for people that are ready to go, okay? So, I was doing this engagement I was in Raleigh, and we were with one of the largest manufacturing companies in the world, and it was their top 50 people, and they had us come down to talk about the future of work, some heady topic like that. And I was to kick off the day, and then my team was there to teach change and how we were going to evolve their business. And this was something to do with aerospace. And so I started talking and giving a speech, and I thought it was a good speech. And I have to tell you, it's the hardest for a speaker when you know nobody cares. I was failing so hard. No one was paying attention. Everyone looked bored. They were all on their phones. I was just going down in flames. So I called an audible, and I said, you know what, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're gonna do a quick exercise. I have no idea what I was gonna do, right? So I go to the bathroom, I'm in the fetal position, what am I gonna do? And now it's very embarrassing because my whole team's there. I just feel like a total jerk. I come out and I see the senior most guy there, he was an EVP, and I said, hey, what's going on? And he looked at me like I had 3 heads. He said, what do you mean? I said, nobody's really paying attention. And he said, oh, no, it's not that we don't believe what you're saying. It's just we really don't think we have the power to enact it. And all I could think of was, why the hell am I here? And I also thought, well, I got nothing to lose. So I brought everybody back in and I said, listen, sit at your tables and organize yourselves. It's important to talk about your sphere of control, right? Don't do your sphere of influence, like changing government regulations. It's not gonna happen. Don't do that. Right, that's why I tell people sphere of influence is interesting, but you're giving yourself a mind grade. Focus on your sphere of control. So I got this group back in and I said, organize yourself by, there was procurement, and then there was rocketry, there was engineering, there was marketing. And I said, okay, here's what you're gonna do. I want at each of your tables, I want you to figure out who your #1 competitor is. The person you keep it up at night, or in your instance, the college you wish you worked for. The institution you're jealous of and you wish you could be like. Talk, 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 5 minutes, they each picked that person at the table, and I said, now, I want you to pretend that you are that company, organization, whatever, put your hat on, you're just like them, and I want you to attack your own organization. And I was giving them an out-of-company experience, right? Proactive obsolescence, do it to yourself before somebody does it to you. And you know what was great about that? It gave people like this, well, first of all, it was like lighters going off at a concert. Everyone was like, oh, this is amazing. I can finally attack the things that aren't working. But even better, what was really interesting is it was like I was mandating them to say the weaknesses, right? Tell me what's really wrong versus how we like to dress them up as they're not really weaknesses, they're opportunities, right? We don't want to do that. So killing the college might be something that's really interesting for you to do and go back and say to people, what's not working? What can we get rid of? What can we streamline? And what can we create the space for more? Okay, now the second thing I want to talk about is engaging with impact. I think for most of us, we spend a lot of our days doing a lot of meaningless things. I truly think a lot of people just go through life not even realizing how they spend their time and committing it to things without intention. That's why you execute your calendar. It's a non-renewable resource. You will never get it back. How can you teach people that it's not okay to waste your time? Because you have bigger things to do. Well, there's a couple things I know that other people do to get rid of stuff that isn't working so they can engage on a daily basis with impact. And what this means for you as leaders is you need to do it first. Because if you don't do it, they won't do it. It's kind of like when the boss says, well, just say no to meetings. No one's going to say no to meetings unless the boss says no to meetings. So here's a couple things that I thought were interesting. Again, you can only do one thing. So we worked with the Chief Simplification Officer at Merck, and this was in Canada. What a great guy. And he decided to simplify because he was just so tired of being exhausted at the end of every day. And they realized that their biggest problem was email. Anybody else have problems with email here? Yeah. Okay, you're welcome. You guys, you're going to love this. So they realized so much of the stuff that comes into their inbox are like literally empty calories, right? They're just stuff where, you know how you send these one-way communications that are meant to be FYIs? You know, here, I saw this and I thought you should read it. And then people feel like they have to respond, right? Like, got it, thanks, here's my dissertation on what you sent. It's so annoying. So they said, for things that are meant to be one way, let's send a signal that people don't feel that pressure anymore, and we're going to type NNTR into the subject line. That stands for no need to respond. And it cut down their email traffic by 18% in 3 months. No need to respond. Now you do it as a group so no one gets offended, right? A lot of this has to do with culture. And if that doesn't work, let's do bluff. Anybody here that's been in the military is knowing what I'm talking about, but this is the latest thing that everyone is catching up on, latest in the last decade. But now we spend a lot of time writing emails without really thinking it through. Right? I mean, it's just kind of like a that we put down on paper. Bluff stands for bottom line up front. So rather than leading up to your point in a long email, why not state it up front with bluff in bold letters? So people that are receiving that email know exactly what you want from them, and people sending it know why they're sending it in the first place. You'll get less emails because people will stop sending stupid emails anymore. Okay, and then another thing you can do, this is interesting that's happening at Microsoft, is why don't you get people thinking, right? You guys are educators. Why don't we get people thinking before they show up to the meeting, right? Using some cognitive learning principles. So what's really interesting is whether you send an email or you send an agenda for a meeting or an invite for a meeting, often what we do is we just send stuff without thinking. Like you get something from me on Zoom and it usually says Lisa Bodell's meeting, and you're like, what the hell's a meeting? Like, what are we meeting about? But everyone comes, right? So what they do now is they say every time they send out an agenda or they send out a meeting invite, it has a question in it. And the question is why we're getting together and the problem that we're going to solve. And of course, it's that kind of cognitive distance, right? We know that people are going to start to think about it before they get there and have a more productive meeting and collaboration together. Now, the next one that I think is really interesting, and it's actually the last one, and this is about eliminating the necessary. I mean, I already talked about stopping it, right? Like if you could just get everybody together and say, what could we stop? I bet they'll have a million things. But the thing that's really interesting about complexity and how it happens is that everybody thinks everyone else does it. No one thinks they do it. And so what's really interesting, especially for the people that are going to be the bosses that are about to do this technique, you're going to need to kind of take a chill pill when you do it. Now, eliminating the unnecessary involves a technique called killing stupid rules. How many people here would love to kill a stupid rule at work? Yeah, here you go. I think this is the most popular thing that we know and we do and we teach, and it is very empowering because it tells people in a structured way how to get rid of things that aren't working. So imagine you get your team together or your staff together, I don't know, all your colleagues together, and you say, if we could kill or change any 2 rules that would help us be more innovative, reach our goals, or reach our potential, what would they be and why? Now, there's only 2 rules to this game. One is there are red rules and green rules. Okay, red rules are things that are like industry mandated, government regulated. If you got rid of them, you would go to jail. Don't touch those rules. Everything else is fair game. The second thing is only work in your sphere of control. Now, if you're the head of the college, you've got a bigger sphere of control. If you're working within your department, work in everything you have in control of your department, right? The daily work. And you know, it's interesting, whenever we do this, and we give people even 15 minutes to just write down things that they want to get rid of, they come up with dozens and dozens and dozens of things. And guess what? Most of them are not rules. They're things that have outlived their time. They are cultural annoyances. They're things like the length of a meeting. There's no rule about the length of a meeting. And what's really great about that is then you can collectively look at these things and say, we should kill and get rid of this. And you'll be able to make a huge impact. We did this once with McGraw-Hill. And what was really interesting is it was their HR team. And they drown in paperwork there. And we did a kill stupid rule, and I had the CHRO up there, and he's looking at all the Post-its on the wall, that all the rules that people want to kill. I mean, there's hundreds of them. He was really shocked, like, God, they think there's hundreds of things to kill. Most of them were his rules. Hint, hint. And I do it with my team all the time. They're always my stupid rules. It's a little hard, it's a little offensive at first, but you realize why people are saying them. And so this guy was standing up there, he was the CHRO, and he's looking at the themes, at all these rules, and he noticed that everyone was writing down the MOR. And that's the monthly operating report. And he said, so you guys want to kill the MOR? Woo! Big round of applause. Yeah, woo! Lighters in the room. And he said, that's fine. He goes, but I came up with the MRR. Right? Everyone's like, oh, fire, this isn't going to be good. And he said, however, I don't like it either. I thought you guys liked it as a way for us to organize ourselves. And one guy even said, I don't even send it. You guys haven't caught me. I haven't been sending it for months. I was like, that's my guy. And so they said, listen, it's nerve-wracking for you to have to do big change. And so the CHRO said, listen, we'll pilot getting rid of it for 3 months, okay? And if we miss it, we bring it back, and if not, we kill it. They killed it in 3 months, and it was gone. There is a huge impact you can make by just killing stupid rules. So, that was a lot of different things. The status quo, impact, and getting rid of unnecessary stuff. The question I want to have for you all is this: what are you going to do first? Don't answer it here. I'll get you in the hallway, or I'll see you at the bars later. But you can only try one. Which one are you going to try first? And really, I think what you're going to try depends on how you react to change. And we all react to it differently, how much you want to lean into it. And so I'll leave you with this last story. And it reminds me of the time where I am in my life, because I have a son right now who's in college. He's a freshman. So we've had a lot of change this year. And it's just so great to see the person that they're becoming when they go off to your world, right? They become independent. They really, they have to think for themselves and have all this potential. No one takes care of them anymore. They're figuring out what they really like. It's an exciting time, and it's stressful. And I know that he's been very stressed. His name's Jack, but he's loved it. And he was always so conflicted about decisions to make, because it's the first time they're really making all these big, big decisions on their own. And it reminded me of a story that I think will be a good analogy for you with change. And there was a son who came home to visit his mother, and he was in school, and he was, just very stressed. And she told him to sit down and talk about it. And he said, I almost don't even know where to start. And she put 3 cups of water in front of him, and she poured a tea kettle and filled him with boiling hot water. And then in the first cup, she put an egg. In the second cup, she put some carrots. And in the third cup, she put some coffee. And so she looked at her son, at this point, who was like, what are you doing? And said, tell me what you see. And she pointed to the first cup, and she said, what do you see? And he said, well, I see an egg. And she said, and what happened to the egg when it went in the boiling water? He said, well, it hardened. And then she went to the next cup and said, okay, what do you see here with the carrots? And they said, well, the carrots, when they went in the water, they softened, right? They went limp. And the third cup, which was full of coffee, she said, what happened when I put the beans in the water? And he said, the coffee changed the water. So what will you be, right? The egg, the carrot? I hope you'll be the coffee, because transformation is something that we can all do, and we can all embrace the change. And what you do is very, very important. Thank you for all the change that you do, and thank you for having me today. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you.